Picture this. You wake up tomorrow morning and the power's out. Not just at your house, but everywhere. Your phone's dead, the water pressure's dropping, and outside your window, you see your neighbor loading his family into their car with whatever they can carry. This isn't a drill. This is day one of an actual collapse scenario. And here's the brutal truth that most preppers don't want to hear. All those supplies you've been stockpiling, they just became the biggest target on your back. I'm Zach, and I've been prepping since 2012. And let me tell you, one of the hardest lessons I learned came during the 2014 ice storms when I watched local authorities go door to door cataloging generators. They said it was for emergency management purposes, but 3 houses on my street had their generators requisitioned for critical infrastructure needs. The owners got receipts, they never got their generators back. Now, before you think I'm trying to scare you, I'm not. Fear-mongering isn't my style. What I am going to do is share with you the 7 categories of items that historical evidence shows will be the first things seized, confiscated, or stolen when society breaks down. And more importantly, I'm going to teach you exactly how to protect these items using methods that have worked in actual crisis situations around the world. See, most people think the biggest threat to their supplies comes from desperate neighbors or roving gangs. And yes, those are real concerns. But the reality is far more complex. During Hurricane Katrina, it wasn't just looters taking supplies. It was organized groups, sometimes in uniform, systematically collecting certain items. During the Venezuelan collapse, government forces didn't randomly raid homes. They targeted specific supplies using lists and intel they'd gathered beforehand. The pattern is always the same. First comes the crisis, then comes the desperation, and then comes the systematic collection of resources by those with the organization and firepower to take them. Whether it's your unprepared neighbors, organized criminal groups, or even government entities operating under emergency powers, your supplies are going to be on someone's shopping list. But here's what they don't want you to know. The items they come for first aren't random. There's a priority list, and it's based on 3 factors: immediate survival value, ease of transport, and potential for control. Understanding this list isn't just academic. It's the difference between keeping what you've worked so hard to build and watching it all disappear when you need it most. So let's dive into the first and most obvious target: your firearms and ammunition. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. From my cold, dead hands, right? But let me share something that happened in New Orleans after Katrina that might change your perspective. The police chief at the time literally said, and I quote, "Only law enforcement are allowed to have weapons." Door-to-door confiscations followed. Legal gun owners, people who'd done nothing wrong, had their constitutional rights suspended and their means of protection seized. This isn't conspiracy theory. This is documented history. It happened in America in our lifetime. And the truly scary part? Most people complied because they were faced with armed law enforcement who weren't taking no for an answer. The few who resisted were arrested, and their weapons were taken anyway. Now, why are firearms always first on the list? Simple. They represent power. In a collapse scenario, whoever controls the weapons controls everything else. Criminal groups want them for obvious reasons, but government entities? They'll frame it as public safety. They'll say it's temporary. They'll promise to return them when order is restored. History shows that rarely happens. So how do you protect your firearms when everyone wants them? First, understand that paperwork equals confiscation. If there's a paper trail showing you own firearms, you're already on a list. During the LA riots, Korean store owners who'd registered their weapons had them confiscated preemptively. Meanwhile, those with unregistered weapons were able to defend their businesses. Here's what actually works: decentralization. Never keep all your firearms in one location. I learned this from a Serbian friend who survived the Balkan conflicts. He told me they kept one obvious gun in the house, usually an old hunting rifle, something to satisfy a casual search. The real defensive weapons? Those were cached elsewhere, behind false walls, buried in waterproof containers, stored with trusted friends who weren't on any lists. And before you dismiss this as paranoid, consider that during Argentina's economic collapse, criminals would torture homeowners to reveal where their guns were hidden. But they could only take what they could find. Those who'd prepared multiple caches
kept their ability to defend themselves even after being robbed. The second thing you need to understand about protecting firearms is operational security. Every photo you post showing off your arsenal, every time you talk about your guns at work, every gun-related sticker on your vehicle, you're advertising. You're literally creating a target list for anyone paying attention. I learned this the hard way back in 2015 when I posted a photo of my new rifle on social media. 2 weeks later, my garage was broken into. They knew exactly what they were looking for. Now let's talk about the second category that'll disappear faster than morning dew in Death Valley: your medications and medical supplies. This one hits different because for many people, we're not talking about comfort or even security. We're talking about literal life and death. During Puerto Rico's hurricane crisis, insulin became more valuable than gold. People were trading generators for a month's supply. Antibiotics were being sold for 50 times their normal price. And pain medications? Forget about it. They became underground currency overnight. But here's what the mainstream media didn't report. It wasn't just criminals stealing medical supplies. Hospital workers, EMTs, even some doctors were hoarding medications for their own families or for trade. Think about it from their perspective. If you're a diabetic and insulin supply chains are cut, you have maybe a month before you're in serious trouble. If you have a heart condition and can't get your medication, you're looking at weeks. If your child needs antibiotics for an infection that would have been simple to treat yesterday, but there are no antibiotics today, what would you do to get them? This is why medical supplies, especially prescription medications, are going to be among the first things people come looking for. And unlike firearms, which some people might hesitate to steal because of the danger involved, medications are seen as fair game. After all, you're just trying to save your family, right? The protection strategies for medical supplies are different from firearms. First, you need to understand that most medications have shelf lives, so long-term burial storage isn't always practical. Instead, you need to focus on 3 things: misdirection, distribution, and discreet acquisition.
Misdirection means keeping decoy medical supplies visible. A small medicine cabinet with common over-the-counter medications, maybe some expired antibiotics, things that look valuable but aren't your critical supplies. When someone's searching for medications, finding something often stops them from looking deeper. By the way, since we're talking about being prepared with the essentials, I want to share something I put together that's helped thousands of people get started with practical prepping. Look, I know how overwhelming it can feel when you're trying to build your emergency supplies. Where do you start? What's actually important versus what's just nice to have? That's why I created a free guide that shows you exactly how to turn just $50 into a 90-day food supply for your family. This isn't some theoretical list. This is the exact shopping list I use, with specific brands, prices, and where to find them. I'm talking about 37 essential items most people never think to stockpile, including number 23, which absolutely shocked me when I learned about it during the Texas freeze. We're talking about emergency meals you can make with zero cooking fuel, storage tricks that work even in a tiny apartment, and that one gas station snack that became like gold for bordering during Hurricane Sandy. The guide also shows you my personal system for scaling up from 1 week to 3 months of supplies without breaking the bank or needing a warehouse to store it all. I even included the specific oil that stays shelf-stable for years when stored properly, which most people get completely wrong. Look, this guide is completely free. I'm not trying to sell you anything here. The link is in the description below. Grab it now while you're thinking about it, because when everyone else is panic buying and the shelves are empty, you'll already be prepared. All right, let's get back to protecting your medical supplies. Distribution is critical for medications. Never keep all your medical supplies in one location. I keep a 3-day supply in my daily bag, a week's worth hidden in my vehicle, a month's worth in the cache only my wife knows about, and my main supply distributed between 3 hidden locations in my home. Why? Because if someone finds one stash, I don't lose everything. The third strategy, discreet acquisition, is about building your medical supplies without creating attention. Filling all your prescriptions at once, buying cases of certain medications, these things get noticed. Instead, rotate pharmacies, build slowly over time. And here's a tip that's perfectly legal, but most people don't know.
Many prescription medications are available for veterinary use without prescriptions. Fish antibiotics are molecularly identical to human antibiotics. I'm not giving medical advice here, just stating a fact that could be relevant in a true collapse scenario. Now, let's move on to the third category. And this is where things get interesting because it's not what most people expect. Your food and water supplies. You'd think these would be number one, right? But here's the thing. In the first days of a crisis, most people still have some food in their pantries. It's not until about 72 hours in that food becomes the primary target. But when that switch flips, it flips hard. During the siege of Sarajevo, people were burning their furniture, their books, even their family photos to cook what little food they had. A can of soup that cost $1 today was trading for what would be equivalent to $100. And people weren't just stealing food, they were killing for it. Here in America, we like to think we're more civilized. But look what happened during COVID. Not even a true collapse, just supply chain disruption, and people were getting into fistfights over toilet paper. Imagine what happens when it's actual food on the line, when it's your children who are hungry. The government response to food shortages is particularly interesting because it follows the same pattern every time. First, they'll implement rationing, then they'll start requisitioning excess supplies for redistribution. And they'll justify it by saying hoarders are the problem. During World War II, having more than a week's worth of certain foods was actually illegal. People went to jail for having too much sugar or coffee. In Venezuela, they created special ID cards that tracked what food you bought and when. Buy too much and you'd get a visit. They'd confiscate your excess and sometimes arrest you for hoarding. The same thing happened in Greece during their economic crisis. The government actually proposed a law that would allow them to confiscate privately held food supplies during emergencies. So how do you protect your food supplies when everyone from your neighbors to your government might want them? The answer is something I call the iceberg strategy. Like an iceberg, 90% of your supplies should be invisible, below the surface. Keep a visible pantry with maybe 2 weeks of normal food. This is what you show people if they ask. This is what you eat from daily, so it looks active and real. But your real supplies? Those need to be hidden with the same creativity you'd use to hide gold bars, because in a collapse, that's essentially what they are. I learned a technique from a couple who survived the Bosnia conflict. They created false walls in their basement using cheap paneling. Behind those walls, they stored their food supplies. When soldiers searched their house, they found the regular pantry, took what they wanted, and left. They never found the 3 months of food hidden 10 feet away. Another technique that's proven effective is the distributed storage method. Instead of one big stockpile that screams prepper, you have dozens of small caches. A bucket of rice hidden in the attic insulation. Canned goods behind the books on a bookshelf. Mylar bags of beans inside old paint cans in the garage. Even if someone searches, they're unlikely to find everything. But here's the real key to protecting your food supplies. Nobody can steal what they don't know exists. The biggest threat to your food storage isn't thieves or government agents, it's your own mouth. Every time you mention your preparedness, every time you post about your latest Costco run, every time you tell someone you're not worried about shortages because you're prepared, you're creating future problems. I made this mistake back in 2016. I was proud of my preparedness and talked about it at work. Fast forward to the COVID shortages, and guess who had multiple coworkers show up at his door asking to borrow some supplies? And when you say no to desperate people who know you have what they need, you've just made an enemy who knows exactly where to come when things get worse. The fourth category brings us to something most people completely overlook until it's too late: your fuel and power generation equipment. Generators, solar panels, battery banks, stored gasoline, propane tanks. These become incredibly valuable because they represent something even more precious than the power they provide. They represent normalcy. During the Northeast blackout of 2003, people were paying hundreds of dollars to charge their cell phones. During Hurricane Sandy, there were reports of gasoline selling for $40 a gallon on the black market. In Puerto Rico, generators weren't just being stolen, people were being murdered for them. But here's what's really interesting about fuel and power equipment. They're usually the first things that get regulated by authorities during a crisis. Within hours of a major disaster, you'll see emergency orders limiting fuel purchases. Then come the regulations about generator use. Then comes the requisitioning of fuel supplies for essential services. I witnessed this firsthand during the 2017 Florida fuel shortage. Even though there was no actual disaster, just the threat of a hurricane caused panic buying. Within 12 hours, the governor was already implementing fuel rationing. Gas stations were required to limit purchases, and there were actually discussions about requisitioning commercial fuel supplies. The challenge with protecting fuel and power equipment is that they're hard to hide. A running generator makes noise that can be heard blocks away. Solar panels are visible from the air. The smell of gasoline is distinctive and travels, so traditional hiding methods don't work. Instead, you need to focus on camouflage and misdirection.
For generators, the smart move is to have two. A small, loud, cheap generator that you run during the day when everyone else is running theirs. This is your decoy. Then you have your real generator, a quality inverter model that runs quiet, which you only run at night or when absolutely necessary. You couple this with sound dampening strategies, building an enclosure, using automotive mufflers, positioning it to direct sound away from populated areas. Solar panels present a different challenge. The traditional roof-mounted panels are basically a billboard announcing you have power when nobody else does. Instead, consider portable panels that can be deployed when needed and hidden when not. Or better yet, install your panels on a ground mount system in your backyard, where they can be camouflaged with tarps or camo netting when necessary. But the real key to protecting your power generation isn't hiding it, it's sharing it strategically. This sounds counterintuitive, but hear me out. During the Balkan conflicts, families that survived best were those that created mutual aid networks with their immediate neighbors. They'd share power for essential needs, charging phones, running medical equipment, preserving critical foods. This created a group invested in protecting the resource rather than stealing it. The fifth category is one that's becoming increasingly important, and most people don't even realize it's at risk. Your communication equipment. Radios, satellite phones, mesh network devices, even your internet router. In a crisis, information becomes as valuable as food or water, and those who control communication control the narrative. During the Arab Spring, governments didn't just shut down the internet. They went door to door confiscating satellite dishes and communication equipment. In Myanmar, possessing certain types of radios became illegal overnight. Even here in America, during Hurricane Katrina, ham radio operators reported having their equipment confiscated by authorities who wanted to control emergency communications. Why does communication equipment become such a target? Because in a crisis, accurate information is power. Knowing what's really happening, being able to coordinate with others, being able to call for help or warn of danger, these capabilities make you exponentially more likely to survive. And that makes you a threat to anyone trying to control the situation. Protecting communication equipment requires a different approach than protecting physical supplies. The challenge isn't just hiding the equipment, it's hiding the fact that you're using it. A transmission can be triangulated, an antenna can be spotted, even the electromagnetic signature of your devices can be detected with the right equipment. The solution is what I call graduated communication security. You have multiple levels of communication capability, and you only reveal what's necessary for the situation. Your phone and regular internet? That's level 1. Everyone has these, so they don't mark you as prepared. A basic emergency radio that receives but doesn't transmit? That's level 2. Still normal, nothing that screams prepper.
Level 3 is where you start getting into capabilities that need protection. A handheld ham radio, satellite communication device, mesh network nodes. These need to be hidden and only used when necessary. But here's the critical part. You need to practice with them now. before you need them. Because figuring out how to program a radio while someone's banging on your door isn't ideal. The sixth category might surprise you, and it's something that even experienced preppers often overlook until it's too late: your tools and hardware. I'm talking about everything from chainsaws and generators to water purification systems and even basic hand tools. These items become incredibly valuable, not just for their practical use, but because they represent the ability to rebuild and repair in a world where nothing new is being manufactured. During the collapse in Argentina, a good chainsaw could trade for a month's worth of food. Why? Because it meant you could cut firewood to cook and stay warm. It meant you could clear roads and help your community. It meant you had a valuable service to offer. Water purification systems became so valuable that people were dismantling swimming pool filters to trade the components. But here's what most people don't realize. Tools aren't just valuable to criminals and desperate neighbors, they're often the first things requisitioned by authorities trying to maintain infrastructure. During natural disasters, I've personally seen public works departments going door to door, borrowing chainsaws, generators, and pumps. They give you a receipt and promise to return them. Good luck with that. Back in 2018, during the California wildfires, I watched crews requisition water pumps from 3 different properties on my street. The owners were told it was temporary for fighting the fires. 2 years later, they were still trying to get compensated. One guy never did get his pump back. It was supposedly lost in the emergency response. The challenge with protecting tools is that they're bulky and hard to hide. You can't exactly bury a chainsaw in your backyard and expect it to work when you dig it up. But what you can do is practice something called tool redundancy and camouflage. Here's what I mean. For every critical tool, you want 3 versions. The first is your decoy. This is the old, beat-up version that barely works. This is what's visible in your garage. If someone's going to steal something, let them take this. The second is your daily use version. This is what you actually use regularly, and it's kept secure but accessible. The third is your cache version. This is a new or like-new tool that's properly stored and hidden for when things get really bad. But here's the real secret to protecting tools. Make them look worthless. That beautiful new generator? Paint it to look old and beaten. Use some rust effect paint. Put fake repair patches on it. Make it look like it barely runs. That pristine chainsaw? Dirty it up. Make it look like it's been repaired with duct tape and baling wire. People steal what looks valuable. Make your tools look like they're not worth the effort. Now we come to the 7th and perhaps most controversial category: your knowledge and information resources. I'm talking about your preparedness books, your maps, your written plans, your digital files, even the knowledge in your head. You might be thinking, who's going to steal books during a collapse? But you'd be wrong to dismiss this threat. During the Chinese Cultural Revolution, people were imprisoned for possessing certain books. In Cuba, having the wrong technical manual could get you labeled a counter-revolutionary. Even in modern America, during the January 6th investigations, people had their digital devices seized and searched for specific types of information. The precedent for information control during crisis is well established.
But it's not just authorities you need to worry about. In a collapse scenario, a book on medicine becomes invaluable to someone without medical knowledge. Maps showing water sources, agricultural guides, technical manuals for repair and maintenance, these become survival tools. And if someone knows you have them, they'll come looking. More concerningly, your knowledge itself becomes a commodity. If people know you have medical training, engineering skills, or extensive preparedness knowledge, you become either an asset to be controlled or a threat to be eliminated. During the Balkan conflicts, educated people were specifically targeted. Doctors were forced to work at gunpoint. Engineers were kidnapped to maintain critical infrastructure. So how do you protect information resources? First, digitize everything you can and store it on multiple encrypted drives. A micro SD card the size of your fingernail can hold an entire library. But don't rely solely on digital. EMP events, whether natural or man-made, could wipe out electronic storage. Keep physical copies of truly critical information, but hide them like you would gold.
Create what I call a knowledge cache. This is a hidden collection of your most important references: medical guides, repair manuals, maps, agricultural information. Seal them in waterproof containers and cache them separate from your main supplies. Because even if everything else is taken, knowledge can help you rebuild. But here's the part nobody talks about. You need to practice information security now, before crisis hits. Stop posting about your skills and knowledge online. Stop telling people about your preparedness expertise. Become the gray man of information. Be someone who knows nothing special, has no unique skills, presents no threat, and offers no value beyond basic labor. I learned this lesson the hard way in 2019. I was helping coordinate disaster response after flooding in our area. I made the mistake of demonstrating extensive knowledge about water purification and emergency medicine. Within days, I had people showing up at my house asking for help, advice, and supplies. In a true collapse, that attention could be fatal.
Now, you might be wondering why I'm sharing all this information if operational security is so important. Fair question. Here's the thing. Right now, we're still in the preparation phase. The time to learn and share knowledge is now, while we can do so safely. But when things start to deteriorate, when the crisis is imminent or ongoing, that's when you shift to protection mode. That's when everything I've taught you about hiding and protecting assets becomes critical. The brutal truth is this. In a true SHTF scenario, everything you own becomes a potential liability. Every resource you have makes you a target. Every capability you possess makes you either an asset to be exploited or a threat to be eliminated. The only way to protect what you have is to ensure nobody knows you have it. This means developing what I call a concentric security mindset. Imagine your preparedness as a series of circles. The outer circle is what everyone can see. This should be minimal, just enough to seem normal but unprepared. The next circle is what close friends and family know about. This is slightly more, but still limited. The inner circles get progressively smaller and more secretive, with the core being knowledge that only you or perhaps your spouse possesses. Each category we've discussed requires different protection strategies, but they all share common principles. Redundancy means never keeping all your eggs in one basket. Concealment means hiding not just the items, but the fact that you're prepared. Misdirection means giving potential threats something to find so they stop looking. And operational security means controlling information about your preparations from the very beginning. Remember that free guide I mentioned earlier? The one about turning $50 into a 90-day food supply? If you haven't grabbed it yet, now's the time. Because here's the thing, all the knowledge about protecting supplies doesn't matter if you don't have supplies to protect. This guide gives you the exact roadmap to build your food security without breaking the bank or advertising that you're a prepper. The link is in the description below. It's completely free, and it includes storage strategies specifically designed to keep your supplies hidden and secure. Don't wait until the shelves are empty and everyone's desperate. Get prepared now while you still can. Look, I've been prepping since 2012, and if there's one thing I've learned is that the best time to prepare was yesterday. The second best time is right now. Not tomorrow, not next week, but right now while supplies are available and nobody's watching what you buy.
Every crisis I've lived through, from natural disasters to economic disruptions, has reinforced the same lesson. Those who prepared early and quietly survived best. Those who waited until everyone else was panicking either paid 10 times the price or went without. And those who prepared but failed to protect their preparations often ended up worse off than those who never prepared at all. The scenarios I've described aren't fear-mongering. They're historical patterns that repeat every single time society faces serious disruption. Whether it's natural disaster, economic collapse, civil unrest, or war, the playbook remains remarkably consistent. First comes the crisis, then comes the desperation, then comes the taking of resources from those who have them. Your job is to ensure you're not an easy target when that taking begins. This means starting your protection strategies now, not when the crisis hits. It means developing habits of operational security today that will be second nature when they matter. It means building your supplies quietly and protecting them creatively. Remember, in a true SHTF scenario, the government isn't coming to save you. They're coming to redistribute what you have to maintain order and control. Your neighbors aren't going to respect your property rights when their children are hungry, and criminals aren't going to pass by your house because you're a good person who prepared responsibly. The only person who's going to protect what you've built is you. And the only way to do that effectively is to ensure that nobody knows what you have to protect. Be the gray man. Be the person nobody thinks has anything worth taking. Be the neighbor who seems just as unprepared and desperate as everyone else, while secretly maintaining the supplies and capabilities to survive and thrive. This isn't about being selfish or not helping others. It's about ensuring you're in a position to help on your terms, not having your resources taken and distributed by others. It's about maintaining the ability to care for your family first and your community second, rather than having everything stripped away in the first days of crisis. The items we've discussed today: firearms, medications, food, fuel, communications, tools, and knowledge. These aren't just supplies. They're the pillars of survival in a collapsed society. Each one represents a critical capability that you'll need to navigate the challenges ahead, and each one requires specific strategies to protect. But here's the final truth I want to leave you with. Physical preparedness is only half the equation. The other half is mental. You need to develop the mindset now that allows you to make hard decisions when the time comes. The decision to not share when sharing could expose your supplies. The decision to mislead when honesty could make you a target. The decision to appear weak when displaying strength could invite challenge. These aren't comfortable decisions. They go against our normal social conditioning. But in a true collapse scenario, the normal rules don't apply. The people who survive aren't necessarily the strongest or the best armed or even the best prepared. They're the ones who adapt fastest to the new reality and make decisions based on that reality rather than clinging to how things used to be. Start practicing these concepts now. Start building your concentric circles of security. Start developing your protection strategies for each category of supplies. Start training yourself to think in terms of operational security. Because when the crisis comes, and history suggests it will, there won't be time to learn these lessons. You'll either have them ingrained or you'll learn them the hard way. If you found value in this video, hit that like button. It helps more people discover this critical information. Drop a comment below with your thoughts on protection strategies. What categories did I miss? What techniques have you learned? And most importantly, subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell. I release new videos every week covering practical, actionable preparedness strategies based on real-world experience and historical precedent. Remember, preparedness isn't paranoia. It's the acknowledgement that our complex, interconnected society is more fragile than most people realize. It's the recognition that history is full of examples of stable societies becoming unstable virtually overnight. And it's the decision to take responsibility for your own survival rather than depending on systems that have repeatedly failed when tested. The time to prepare is now. The time to protect those preparations is also now. Because when everyone else realizes they need what you have, it'll be too late to protect it. Stay safe, stay ready, and remember, being prepared isn't just about having supplies. It's about keeping them when everyone else wants them. Thanks for watching. I'm Zach, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, keep prepping, but more importantly, keep quiet about it.